Canada's economy is made of big and small businesses, like Davenport Tailors in downtown Toronto. People who work in places like these have a feel for how things are going. They don't read statistics, but the cash register.
From our vantage point, it's looking good. If you would come here on a Saturday, you would think that the economy is booming.
Building cars and trucks is at the other end of things, a big business. And manufacturing is a place where Canada has not been doing well. Plant closures, government bailouts, trouble in places like Ontario and Quebec. Alberta's oil sands are a success story at the other end of the country. It has provided work for people from Atlantic Canada to British Columbia who migrate there. Oil has made Canada richer, the dollar stronger, and Western Canada more politically powerful. Patricia Croft is an economist who once did the heavy thinking for two big banks and some investment firms. She still monitors the economy and is cautiously upbeat about where Canada is headed as we climb out of the long job slump.
Well, in terms of the outlook for the Canadian economy, we're actually quite well positioned. But the fact of the matter is Canada is not an island. So beyond our borders, there's a lot of uncertainty. Europe is an economic and political mess. Japan's growth will be pedestrian at best. China and India are slowing. And in the U.S., the economic numbers are somewhat mixed. But our best hope is that the U.S. continues on this path of fragile recovery. So Canada is only one of 4 developed economies in the world today that has a AAA credit rating status. And I think it's entirely justified. We have sound economic system, good growth in the economy, sound banking system, and as well strong commodity prices, which will benefit our economy. But we do have our warts. The Bank of Canada has continually warned about the record high level of debt, personal debt to income, and indeed there are some indications that house prices in some markets may be overinflated.
The chart tells the tale. This is one of the longest housing booms in Canadian history. Apart from a short blip at the start of the financial crisis in 2007-2008, it's been straight up, ignoring the sell-off in the United States. Everyone has predicted the bubble will burst, but so far it hasn't.
Well, this is the great debate right now, and I hesitate to use the B word, the bubble word, but I think nationally house prices in Canada are overvalued by about 10 to 15%. So that's not a bubble. We've seen bubbles in the United States, in Ireland and Spain, and when they burst, house prices fall by 50%. So Canada does not have a bubble. The analogy that I would use would be a bicycle tire that's a little bit overinflated. So we need to let some of that air out. So I think over the next 2 to 3 years, house prices are going to fall by about 10% and perhaps more in markets that are overvalued, significantly overvalued, such as Toronto and Vancouver. So it's not a bubble, but as interest rates rise, I think we will see house prices begin to moderate.
The home front is not the only potential problem. The Eurozone is a mess. Ireland, Greece, Italy, Spain, and maybe France is next. Just take a look at the map of Europe. All the countries that are in red are in recession. Unemployment rates over 20% in Spain and Greece. The problems in Europe could be felt here. It might be as serious as a global recession, or it might just affect the way the Bank of Canada deals with interest rates. The cost of borrowing is at the lowest level in 100 years. Great news for borrowers, such as people buying houses at record levels. Bad news for savers, investors in bonds, and retirement funds. Everyone seems convinced, though, that rates will rise. What will that mean?
Well, in terms of the outlook for interest rates, one of the downsides of the good economic prospects for Canada is that we are probably going to be one of the first countries that actually raises interest rates. Now, in the United States, the Federal Reserve has taken the very unusual step of signaling that rates there are going to remain close to zero until the end of 2014. It's very different in Canada. Recently, the Bank of Canada has hinted that rates here are probably going to rise in the next 6 to 12 months. Now, in terms of the Canadian interest rate scenario, the normal interest rate in Canada is about 4%. So we're sitting at 1% today. So we've got a long way to go towards normal, but that process of normalizing is about to begin. So I think rates are going to rise in the next 6 to 12 months, but they're not going to rise dramatically. They're not going to shoot upwards because the Bank of Canada is acutely aware of the impact of higher interest rates on highly indebted Canadian consumers. So the days of low interest rates are coming to an end, but they're not going to rise dramatically because of concerns around debt.
What does that mean for the Canadian dollar?
This has everything to do with the story for the Canadian dollar. Now, I'm a Canadian dollar bull. I think parity is the new normal, and indeed, I think over the next year, the Canadian dollar could easily touch $1.10 or $1.15 against its U.S. counterpart. Part of it is because the Bank of Canada will raise rates well ahead of the U.S. Federal Reserve, so that'll boost the value of the dollar. But the other story is the fundamentals of Canada. Foreign investors want to put their money in Canada, a safe, sound economy. And in addition to that, robust commodity prices will support Canadian dollar strength as well. So this is the new normal, the dollar above parity.
One industry that affects everyone watching this is television and film production. The old worry is that a strong dollar is as bad for the entertainment business as it is for the car business. But production has adapted to a stronger dollar.
Well, I'm not an industry expert, so I can't really speak to that, but I do think over the next year you don't want to have a job in manufacturing, given that the dollar is headed higher, and residential construction could also be under pressure. But in terms of the film and movie business in Canada, one of the big advantages is that wages are lower in Canada than the United States. It costs less to make a movie in Toronto, Vancouver, or in Los Angeles. In addition to that, the tax subsidies are very attractive, so I think the outlook for this industry is quite positive.
This is Fred Langen reporting.